being recorded.
The February meeting of the Environmental Services Committee. Meeting's been held in the Town Hall in Enniskillen with councillors in the chamber and also councillors on WebEx. So it's not a big agenda, but if we try and keep it tight, it's a dirty old wet evening and we maybe get home at a reasonable time. Some of my party colleagues have asked me to point out that Councillor Armstrong has a birthday today. I was going to hold back, but the colleagues have forced me. I've been whipped and such, I think is the term, 3-line whipped. Next we'll go to apologies, and I'm going to go to Councillor Tommy Maguire from Sinn Féin.
Cheers.
To Birch, Les Giltung, Group of Sinn Féin, and I have two apologies, Padraig Kelly, Councillor Padraig Kelly, and Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly. And I'd just like to add Brett Lahana to Diana. Just happy birthday to Diana as well, Chair.
Thank you, Tommy. Next we go to Councillor Warrington, UUP.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Barton and Councillor Irvine and Councillor Rainey will be leaving early, and again from our group, and happy birthday to Councillor Armstrong, and we'll check our singing voice at the end of the meeting if we have it, if we're still able to talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. And next we go to Councillor Paul Robinson, the DUP.
Chair, no apologies, but Councillor Stevenson will be late. And congratulations, Diana, on your birthday. I think John has a cake for you under the table, I think. You know.
Thank you, Paul. There's nobody from the SDLP in the chamber, and I'm not seeing on my list, so if somebody from the SDLP would like to indicate.
Yeah, John here, John.
Okay, thank you, Councillor John Coyle. Go ahead.
Can I, two apologies, Councillor Garvin McPhillips and Councillor Adam Gannon. And Councillor Garrity will be 15-20 minutes late. She has an appointment at 7 she needs to go to. And wish Diana a happy birthday, and we'll give her the bumps later.
Thank you, John. I'm wondering, I'm just going down the list here. Eamon, I can see yourself on there. Have you aware of any apologies from the smaller parties and independents? Councillor Eamon Keenan. Oh, sorry, there's Donald there as well. I'm not seeing anybody indicating, so.
Chair, I haven't got any apologies, but perhaps there are some. I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Next, we go on to the minutes of the signing of the minutes, and I've already done that. And now we'll go to matters arising out of the minutes of the, declarations of interest. Councillor Donald O'Coffey.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I've just have to realise I have got apologies from Emmett McAleary. He's at a consultation on the threat to close emergency general surgery at Gordon, and he will try to make it in later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Donald. I'm not seeing anybody indicating either in the chamber or on WebEx, but if you do become aware of something that conflicts your interests, do let us know. So next we go on to the, we've already signed the minutes, so now we go through the minutes for matters arising. So first of all, we go to page 2, and I'm actually going to bring Councillor Bernice Swift in here on item 4.1. She has a matter she wishes to raise on that.
Thank you, John. And I just wish to appraise members on the Pothole Pro machine, of which we've had discussions about since last July. And we've already experienced the DFI civil servants, their hierarchy and the minister on this topic in the Grange. And it is my belief firmly that they haven't been very forthcoming nor indeed engaging on this matter, and the responses back to the council have been a complete brush off and indeed misleading to all councillors, and I have just been appalled at the responses, particularly from Daniel Healy, who is the Western Divisional Manager. So as well, I have highlighted already in other discussions, and by way of an update to you all since our last meeting, some members may have spotted on the Good Morning TV, the BBC breakfast show, it featured the JCB Pothole Pro machine with the General Manager and the people from Stoke-on-Trent City Council. And I have since been in touch with the former Mayor and Councillor of Stoke-on-Trent City Council about the same pothole machine. And between me and him, his name is Mark, we have had discussions and a checklist back from JCB, none other, on their work to date in how they have assisted the pothole problem over there in Stoke-on-Trent. And indeed, throughout other areas of the Highlands of Scotland, I've been looking at, and in Cumbria. I have a link that I will share with councillors after this meeting, but I had organised a Zoom to discuss this issue with the councillor and the mayor from Stoke-on-Trent, and he explained to me the advantages for their area. He's an active and avid campaigner, a bit like what I've become on this issue myself, and he actually contacted me as a direct result of seeing our problem as listed on the online Impartial Reporter article. So I've obtained many links on the operations of the machine, and I've obtained facts from JCB, which totally rebukes the Western Division letter back to the council. And while it was agreed at our last meeting of the council to schedule a meeting with Mr. McQuillan, I'm aware from speaking with our official, John, that that meeting might not take place until possibly the end of March or indeed the beginning of April. So I know from all other councillors who have been at their DFI, DEA roads meetings this week that potholes were high on the agenda and took up much of their meetings. So I'm seeking the support from all present that the costs, including the initial and whole life, the efficiency, the sustainability, the operatives and skills training, and the health and safety that we have been told is the problem and the barrier to the purchase of the machine. It's not the money, it's those issues I can completely rebuke and quell out of the water. The facts are clear to be seen for themselves. They have been able to do 7 years' work in 12 months of covering potholes. Like, that in itself is an amazing statistic. And I know one time health and safety and that of employees was an issue, but to be frank, it has been told to me there's no safer way to repair the defects permanently, because this machine actually eliminates the halves, risks, the white finger issue for employees, and it reduces a lot of specialist kit moving on site. And the whole sustainability argument is ridiculous when you see and hear the facts. One customer indeed reported saving 500 trees worth of carbon since using the Pothole Pro. The Pothole Pro, as you know, John, you've seen it yourself in operation in England, and it really is doing 5 pieces of work in one. And it was only until I observed the video, the assisted video, did I realise how difficult it actually is and the time and cost involved in filling in the pothole. So I think all in all, the arguments back definitely outweigh the good, outweighs the bad in this instance. So I'm here now tonight seeking the support and help from all councillor colleagues who are interested in helping our entire roads network in our super council area. And so I'm asking now that FODC, our council, could indeed contact JCB to arrange and organise a Zoom demonstration. That's very easy. Those of us who can and will and are able to give up time to do that will do that. And then I would further ask that our council as well would contact the senior engineer in Louth County Council, who is well evidenced as well on their opinion for the contrast to what we have received from our DFI response. Because in my opinion, it would be totally unwise of us to dismiss this as being a very good idea And we are not the accountable authority, and we are not the people who are statutory obliged to deliver. So it's up to them. But if we have our evidence and everything based and ready to present, it becomes then completely a no-brainer. Vermagad.
Right, thank you, Bernice. I've indulged you there.
Thank you.
I know everybody's nodding, looking at me. You have gone well over your time, but I think you had an awful lot to cover there, and I know it was very important, and it's something I am also quite interested in. Next, I have Councillor Seamus Green.
Thank you, Chair. Very interesting, and I have to commend Bernice for her tenacity in following this up and keeping at it. Some of them statistics are really eye-opening, especially after our DEA meetings that we had there at the beginning. Ours was at the beginning of the week, I think Monday, which was extremely depressing because everything that was mentioned basically was no, nothing could be done, not our problem, someone else's problem, and so basically nothing could be done. So if Bernice's proposal there needs a seconder, I will do that. I would just also like to mention that at the DEA meetings, it did come up that the contractor that does resurfacing still hasn't been appointed after 18 months for the, I'm not sure whether it's the Fermanagh, the entire Fermanagh area, or whether it's the Air and East area, but hasn't been contracted after 18 months without it. And I would also like the council to write a letter and ask that all of the money that was allocated to this area for resurfacing work over the last 18 months, has it been ring-fenced? And when the contractor is in place, will the money then be able to be used as well as the other money that's coming in from now on to resurface roads? Or was it not ring-fenced? Have we lost the money through incompetence of road service, DFI road service? And if the money is gone, where did it go? Did it go to some other area to be used? Was it sent back to the Department of Finance? So I would like to propose that letter as well to the private permanent secretary of DFI, if possible.
Thank you, Seamus. Next we go to...
Thanks, Chair, for accommodating me there.
Thank you, Seamus. Next we go to Councillor Victor Warrington in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair. Well, certainly coming in on the back of Seamus there, we were at the DFI meeting on Monday morning, to say that we came away utterly depressed is probably an understatement. You know, we all highlighted lots of problems in our area, some and you know, problems that have been ongoing for not months, but some of them for years. And we're, you know, all the responses that we got were very negative the whole way through that meeting. And certainly I agree, you know, Bernice's potholing machine, I think that's what it'll have to be called that if we do get one, Bernice's pothole machine. I think certainly the statistics which Bernice is telling us there, it does sound very good. And certainly, boy, is it needed at this moment in time in the area. The only problem I would see, obviously, in the mainland, I think councils have the responsibility for roads. We're over here, obviously, it's split to the DFI, but we must keep on at these guys to get answers. And certainly, if this pothole machine is as good as we're being told, it would certainly solve a lot of our problems going forward. And if Seamus needs a seconder for his letter, I'll second that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. That's what I was going to ask you, Victor. Next to go to Councillor Anthony Feely in the chamber.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I was going to second Seamus' proposal, but I think there's done it. That's good. Yeah, myself and Bernice and Alex was at the DA meeting on Monday as well, and although they're doing their best, but I suppose with the resources they have and little money they have, the few potholes I reported about, they did get them eventually fixed, which was good. But I just want to back Bernice then, Seamus, on the proposal, because I was chatting Bernice about it after, and it does seem to be going to be a great job we get it. And Brian Stewart said at the DA meeting, if he does get it, I think Bernice is going to be driving it and using it in the start. Yeah, so that's forward to that.
Thank you, Anthony. Next we go to Councillor Paul Robinson in the chamber.
The meeting, depressed at a meeting time, but no hoping on meeting at all. No matter what you raised, there was no money for anything. We can do this, we can't do that. There's no contractors or nothing to do anything. And I hope to have, very happy to support Bernice's machine, pothole machine, and hope it works out, Bernice. We're fully behind you and all, so you have the DUP support as well.
Thank you, Paul. Next we go on to WebEx, Councillor John Coyle.
Thank you, Chair. Fully support Bernice and her efforts. I seconded the last time, so I think the research that she has done, it'll be very valuable to us, and I think that a meeting with JCB to have a demonstration would be very much welcomed. And I fully support Councillor Green as well. Very annoyed coming away from the meetings that no contracts have been put out this last 18 months. There is sections and roads in my area that I need addressed as soon as possible, but is the money there? Is it ring fenced? Is it not? And I fully support the efforts that will try and get answers so that it is, and that our rural road users are priority. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next we go to Councillor Earl Thompson on WebEx.
Thank you, Chair. And first of all, can I commend Councillor Bernice Swift for all her work on this matter. We had our DEA meeting on Friday, and I suppose I see Councillor Dehan on here as well. From an owner perspective, it was certainly disappointing as well. Although my understanding is that there are contractors back out there again in the Oma side, but still there are a lot of potholes, even in around the county town of Oma, county town of Tyrone, which is the largest town in our district, and the potholes are atrocious that we have in them. So very supportive of Councillor Swift and the supportive of the JCB demonstration to be held via Zoom as well. And obviously my party colleague and group leader, Councillor Robinson, has already spoken on behalf of the party on that one as well. So I suppose we could call this machine the Swift machine, and would it be Swift to cover or sort out the potholes as well? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Earl. You've been saving that one up all evening, haven't you? Next we go to Councillor Dehan. Josephine?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And at the outset, I would like to join other members in wishing Councillor Diana Armstrong a very happy birthday. And I think it attests to her dedication to her councillor role that she is with us this evening. So happy birthday, Diana. And moving on then to Councillor Swift's proposal, I too would like to commend Bernice on the tenacity with which she has addressed this issue and the time and effort that she has gone into liaising with counterparts in Great Britain regarding this pothole fixing machine. There's no doubt, Chair, that the issue of potholes on our roads is a major one. And these potholes cause enormous damage to vehicles all through the year. And I suspect that it probably would be more economic for DFI roads to try to fix the potholes rather than to pay compensation to motorists. But for motorists, it's not even the cost of repairs, but the inconvenience and the frustration of it. We all pay our road taxes, and we are entitled to expect that our roads are fit for purpose. Because of the nature of our climate, because of the extensive road network, particularly with rural roads, and you know, the lack of regular resurfacing. Potholes are an issue that will recur and recur, and I think if we have a solution in the form of a rapid potholing fixing machine, then we should make every effort to ensure that it is deployed by DFI Road Service, and whatever concerns they have regarding safety, efficiency, effectiveness, you know, let those issues be fully addressed. But I certainly support Bernice's proposals, and I would be very interested in having a demonstration on the use of those machines. And finally, Chair, yes, there still are a lot of potholes around the Omagh DEA, but we had good news at our DEA meeting on Friday past that the road surfacing contract, which had been suspended, has been reinstated from September of last year, and there actually have been quite a bit of resurfacing projects completed in the Omagh DEA. But a lot of work done, and we're grateful for that, but much more to do. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I don't think any of the officers need to come in. Everything is sort of in hand, and I'm assuming that we'll try and arrange that. There's a very busy schedule between now and the end of our mandate, but I believe the officers will do their best to try and fit that in. Okay, so we'll move on to item 4.2, and that's to do with the parking restrictions in the town centre, and Officer John Boyle is going to come in on that.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Chair, it's a response back again from the Department for Infrastructure in relation to a query regarding the legislative process for the re-establishment of parking enforcement in Enniskillen. You will see, and it's included at 9.3 of the agenda. It just came in today. You note that they've stated that as the legislation has to be based on the Belt Street layout drawings, not just on the plans themselves, and therefore they couldn't take through the process until the scheme itself was finished on the ground. And they have highlighted that they've been working very closely with the council's project manager to ensure those accurate drawings were produced that allows the mapping to now take place, and highlight again that it will take between 6 and 9 months to complete, and much longer if there's a legal challenge to any of the proposals. Chair, I probably should point out that from an officer point of view, DFA were involved in all stages of the public realm scheme in Enniskillen, and all drawings, which were accurate, I have to state, were in their possession at all times. And indeed that the part of the process and the delay in the process has been to the fact that they didn't progress the statutory processes, and indeed we've had to resubmit drawings to them in order for them to progress that legislative responsibility. Chair, if I may adjust the other piece of correspondence included at 9.11 of your agenda, and it's linked to this also, is just correspondence from the Department for Infrastructure informing the Council of the disabled parking bays, which are included as part of the scheme, and they highlight that they are proposing to legislate for those schemes as indicated on the attached maps. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. And first of all, we'll go to Councillor Victor Warrington in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, I'll propose to note the two pieces of correspondence. But in doing that, I have to express disappointment at the fact that this is going to take goodness knows how long to get this legislation in place. As the officer has told us, you know, the DFI had the drawings the whole way along, and obviously they've lost some of them and had to actually get them back again from us. It's a free for all out on that street on any given day that you come up with. I was in town today again, and certainly for delivery drivers, not even for blue badge holders, but for delivery drivers, it must be an absolute nightmare, because there is not a load and play in sight that you would get any size of a vehicle in on. So it is frustrating, and it is frustrating that we're going to have to wait for goodness knows how many months. We mightn't be councillors whenever it is in, but we can sit back and look at it. We'll wait till that time comes. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Victor. Next we go to Councillor Seamus Green in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll second that proposal to note. Just to on the disabled parking bays, it's great to see the amount of them that is on in the Skillen Town Hall Street there. Whenever the things got up and running, but it just kind of reminds me of the disabled parking bays in our second biggest town in the county, Lisnaskea, that are at this stage you could not make them out, even if you stood and searched for them. They're gone. The markings are completely gone. An absolute disgrace to see. There's no point in them doing disabled parking bays in Enniskillen that can't be used at the minute. Letting the disabled parking bays, as well as all the other lanes in Skea, just fade away. And I think DFI have to be called out on this. It is pure incompetence from DFI officials. It's all right, they can blame politicians for this and that, which they were doing in the DA meetings and that, but the incompetence of this here is down to at official level. And letting the resurfacing contractors run out of contract 18 months ago is at official level. It wasn't politicians did that. And they certainly do need to be called out on it, and I'd suggest another letter to call them out on it. Only I know it's the answer would yet, but they really, really do have to look in the mirror at that farce that is happening in Enniskillen, and that Fermanagh has been left without a contractor. I was interested to hear that OMA got a lot of resurfacing work done there recently. Somebody said, I wonder is that part of the money that should have been allocated to Fermanagh but couldn't be spent because there was no contractors. But anyway, it's good somebody got benefit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Seamus. And next we go to Councillor it's not as you move to Keith. Councillor Keith Elliott in the
Chair.
chamber.
Well, obviously I'd be disappointed that this parking issue is going to take so long. I was speaking to a guy from another busy town, not in the district, and cars parking outside his premises, he reckons that it changes about 30 times in the day. And you walk out of this town hall any day and turn left, and between here and Heaton's, there's 7 or 8 cars, the same cars, parking on the street all day. So there's potentially, 200 different cars that could come in if the thing was being, he reckons cars coming in at 2 every hour. So you take that, people trying to get parked on the street that can't get parked on the street, and these are business owners that are parking all day outside their shops. So how does that work? People's giving out about not being able to park on the street, and then we have this going on. And I suppose it will go on. There was an advert or an article in one of the papers there that highlighted it, and it was worse the next day because everybody realised here this, it's a free for all. So I just want to put that out there. Thanks.
Thank you, Keith. Next we go to Councillor Alex Baird in the chamber.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was speaking to a person today in Enniskillen who informed me that some people are going to get their eyes open from next week because the officials will initiate a process of enforcement. It won't necessarily be what we have been complaining about, but yellow lines which have not been enforced, or parking yellow lines which haven't been enforced, will be from next week. So I think we can anticipate quite a few disgruntled motorists in the town. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alex. And next we go to Councillor Anthony Feely in the chamber.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to agree. A lot of the comments has been made there, and I'm not sure whether Seamus did make a proposal to write to DFA to see what the paint the disabled bays in Listerski, and not just Listerski, other towns and villages in the district as well. You know, if I know there are scattered nerves in other towns, even maybe one or two in the smaller village. So if you made a proposal, I'll second it, and if not, I'll propose myself.
I'll go back to Seamus briefly. He was minded to, but didn't think it was worthwhile. But if he wants to,
Yeah, I'll propose that. Yeah.
okay, Seamus. So we'll take that as a proposal and seconded by Anthony. Finally, we go to Councillor Diana Armstrong in the chamber.
Chair, I'd like to also make another proposal. It's really on the back of what Seamus was saying there. Today, I have to report a rare sighting. It was a line painting team at Rossvad, and 1 mile further along the road towards Lara, there are road signs saying warning, no junction markings. So I thought, great, okay, when I come out of town, this will be done. When I came out of town, it wasn't done. There was no sign, but there were some very bright white lines at Rossvad Cross. So I don't know where this team has gone. So I propose that if the council should write to clarify when the line painting programme is coming back to the district, to Fermanagh, or to Fermanagh and Omagh. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Diana. I'm going to Councillor Roy Armstrong or Roy Crawford, who's going to hopefully second this.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to second Councillor Armstrong's proposal there.
Thank you, Roy. So I think that's that item well debated. So we go on now to page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9. Page 10. It's lovely. Thank you very much. So now we go on to sorry, what's this here? It's not cancel, isn't it? Sorry. So next we go on to item 4, which, sorry, correction, item 5, which is the street naming and numbering dual language. And we go to Officer John Broyle. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Chair, which is now the standard report on dual language numbering for councils, for members to consider. There are 10 roads which are for consideration this evening. You will see that 8 of them have not met the threshold of 15%, with Orbal-Shilley Road and Halligan Road haven't met the 15% threshold. And Chair, the Irish language translation for those 2 roads is included at 2.7 of the report. And also in section 3, the financial implications of the 2 roads totaling just over £4,000 of a cost. So therefore, Chair, it's recommended that the council approves the installation of the dual language signage for the roads listed at table 2 of section 2.7 in accordance with the street name and numbering policy.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I'll go to Councillor Patrick Withers in the chamber.
Chair Margaret Harley, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to propose the recommendations, and I'm pleased to see the continued growth of these dual language signs throughout the district, and particularly my own DA, which these 2 signs are. I think the fact the threshold hasn't been met in some of the areas shows the policy is working and being effective. So I would encourage other councillors, previous months haven't been able to support the recommendations that are in line with the council policy. So hopefully they'll be able to do that tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next we go to Councillor Matthew Bell in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair. I actually think this is quite a disappointing report, and I thought even the councillors who are advocates for these dual Irish English signs would also consider it a disappointing report. 80% of the roads did not meet the criteria, and the criteria is of rather low 15% to meet. And the 20% of the roads that did meet the criteria didn't even hit a simple majority of 50%. And this does raise the question, and if John has the answers for me on hand, I would appreciate to know how much officer/staff time was used on this field exercise and how much resources and council money was wasted. I am very mindful that tomorrow night we will be striking a new rate, and I would have been of the opinion every single councillor in this room would be wanting to scrimp and save pennies where we can to keep it as low as possible. The fact that 50% of these roads receive no responses at all suggests to me it was councillors and not residents who proposed that these roads were consulted, because presumably at least one person on the road would do it if they were the one that requested it. This is a trend, and if we look through our minutes and the reports of the previous council meetings, we come across time and time again roads that saw no responses from any of the people who lived on the road. This does make me believe that it's councillors wanting this, not residents. And this is despite reassurances when we were creating this policy by Sinn Féin across the room, but this policy will not be used to force dual signs into any areas where they were not wanted. And if I'm wrong in my belief, feel free to correct me, but just do remember that these meetings are recorded, and your answers will be permanent. I will highlight one, which is Rectory Avenue, which saw a 90% disagreement rate. 90%. And that other 10% was someone who didn't fill in the bit of paper. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next we go to Councillor Paul Robinson in the chamber.
Chair, the DUP will not be supporting it tonight again either. And what about the other the signs is already up on the end of the roads? I see a lot of them broke, both in Vanna and in Noma. And I reported it away signs in my area way back before John Hughes came, but signs need to be replaced. Never was a thing done about it. Never heard tell them again. Sent in the names of the roads and all.
Yeah. Well,
And that be looked at, and there was in this thing, the more benefit to ambulances not there and police not there, or called out to someone.
yeah. Do you want to come in there, John?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to pick up with Councillor Robinson just to get the names of those roads and of any other members outside of the meeting, and make sure that they are on the list. And broken road signs are reported and recorded onto the Concerto system, so that they should be on the system, but we'll double check that for you after the meeting. And we then replace signs in order of works that are coming in, and obviously there are other priority works that come in from time to time as well. But we are working our way through repairs and replacements on the Concerto asset management system.
Next we go to Councillor Seamus Green in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair. Well, just to comment on Paul's contribution there, maybe the solution, Paul, would be to look for Irish language signs, and then you'd get all new signs on the road. So just a thought. The other thing, just on Councillor Bell's contribution, I was waiting to see which of the Ulster Unionist councillors would be first off the mark to continue their mantra that they have had from, I have been in the council anyway, and I suppose from this state that was formatted, that anything Irish they were against. And it's a wee bit sad and disappointing that it's Councillor Bell, the youngest Ulster Unionist councillor, that is keeping up the long and, I would say, shameful tradition of all things anti-Irish. If there's anything Irish, the Ulster Unionists, and I have to say, in fairness to the DUP, they don't be just as eager as the Ulster Unionists to be the first to the bell to object to anything. So just on that note there, I would like to second Councillor Withers' proposal.
Thank you, Seamus. Next we go to Councillor Victor Warrington in the chamber.
Well, contrary to the previous speaker, certainly I'm not against everything Irish as much as maybe Councillor Green thinks I am. As I've stated before, I don't believe 15% is democratic, and that's why our party will vote against this tonight again. We're not questioning the policy. We know the policy's in place, but it is our right to vote against it, and we will be voting against it tonight again. Thank you.
Next, we go to Councillor Alex Baird in the chamber.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Going back to what the Director News says about reporting signs, I would remind people that in relation to any broken signs, there is a code on the sign, and when reporting it, to include the code because it'll speed things up. There can be misinterpretations of the road or whatever. I'm reticent to respond to Seamus in his allegation, the Ulster Union's attitude to the Irish language. I certainly have no antipathy towards it. Would love to have the time to learn it, and maybe if those who are such proponents of dual language signs actually learn the language, we would be convinced a bit more that the purpose of the dual signing and putting them into places where very few people want them is almost tantamount to the tradition of painting footpaths, which I would oppose in any context. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next, we go to Councillor Keith Elliott in the chamber.
Say thank you, Chair. Just with regard to the table that's put out every month here, could we have a column put into that with just a C or an O put into that, whether that's a councillor or an occupier that's putting in the application? Thank you. Can I propose that?
I'm going to bring Officer John Boyle in.
Chair, if that's the wishes of the council, that can be done, yes.
I'm going to Councillor Tommy Maguire in the chamber.
I'm going Margaret Kerley. Well, I wasn't going to come in and join in the now monthly tradition of banging a drum against this report, regardless of whether it was 100% or, as regrettably this month, there is a low return. But some of the councillors maybe weren't here when this issue was first addressed, when the councillors were involved in an Irish language working group and Ulster Scots working group, and we worked very well to create an understanding of the necessity for the promotion of the Irish language across our district, which is an obligation under a whole lot of literature that we've gone through many, many times before. We have a policy in the council that states 15%. It's the policy of the council. Now, I would seriously question the intent of the Ulster Unionists in particular, as Councillor Green indicated, because definitely they seem to be the first out of the blocks when it comes to criticism of anything relating to the Irish language, despite the fact that we did have a very good working relationship within the workshops and the working group. So disappointed every month to listen to this same mantra, questioning the cost, questioning everything else. This policy came on the back of work that was carried out by the council, communicating with the Irish language groups out there across our district. And it was at the behest and a request from them that we formulated the policy that would allow the language to be seen and to normalise the language in the public places. That is the background to it. It is not a Sinn Féin agenda of rebranding the streets. This is purely and simple as a response to the Irish language groups that are out there across our community. It was all done correctly, as far as I'm sure. There was public consultations, etc. And we've come to the situation now where every month we're demanding that this gets a scrutiny way beyond any other reports that we get here every month. There's the same whinging, and whinging is all it is about the money, when in fact every councillor in the place should know by now the money has been ring-fenced, and we have made an adjustment to it to accommodate the economic crisis we're facing. So everything has been done and is being done according to this council's agreed policy. And why every month we have to sit here and to listen to, which fundamentally must bring into question some councillors' opinions towards good relations, Section 75 and everything else. So councillors, we sit here and we accept requests and proposals that are a total anathema to our tradition and our culture. But we do understand that we have a shared space. We allow councillors from other traditions to represent this council at functions that certainly we on this side of the chamber would certainly be nowhere near. But we acknowledge there are a lot of varied opinions out there, and we give some slack. We don't look for a report month on month asking for further details to be put in to indicate how much down to the last pound. And I would certainly object to the inclusion in this report of whether a request came for a councillor, which is legal within our policy, or whether it came from the local community. But having said all that, I would just like to put it on public record that we have a policy which allows 15% of the people in any road in our district to request bilingual signs. That information needs to get out there to cultural groups, sporting groups, and traditional Irish supporting groups, that they have the opportunity to select bilingual signs for their street, and all they need is 15% of that area to agree to it, and the policy is there. And I'm glad that we have that policy, but I certainly would encourage groups to respond. It is unfortunate that this month we've got a poor response, but we've had better ones in the past. But this over-scrutiny of anything to do with Irish language or promotion, which is at the request of our community, it has not just been promoted by individual councillors or parties in the chamber. Gurmagat.
Thank you. Next we go to Councillor Paul Stevenson in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second Councillor Elliott's proposal. It is part of the policy, whether it be councillor or whether it be occupier or street occupier or whatever it may be. So I don't see any harm in it happening. It should be part of the information available, I think, to the dual language signs. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next we go to Councillor Roy Crawford. No? You're okay. Next we go on to WebEx and Councillor Chris McCaffrey.
Thank you, Chair. And I feel like I'm in Groundhog Day, because every month it's the same debate, even though we had this well discussed and there were challenges made to the policy at the time, and legal challenges made, and it was in line with what had been done in Belfast City Council and other council areas. So I am really sick and tired at this stage at the same old arguments that are just inconsistent and don't actually add up to the international best practice, which is why we brought this policy forward. We are in a time now that the new decade, new approach promised language rights for the Irish language community, which is a large section of our society, whether people like it or not. We don't and won't be treated like second-class citizens. I can quote numerous examples of when Irish language community have been given a disservice in the past, but now we have this policy in place. It's in line with the UN Charter on Linguistic Minority Rights, and international research has consistently shown that the visibility of minority languages leads to increased normalisation, which in turn then contributes to increased tolerance and understanding of those languages. And Irish, as we know, is an important component of our shared heritage. And so signage, particularly in all of our shared public spaces, should include Irish. It provides a neutral opportunity for people to engage with the language. And it's for this reason that this policy was put in place. Now, we've got admittedly a poor response this month. But as we know, sometimes when you're engaging with the electorate and with the public, there can be poor responses. Even at election times, you can have poor turnouts. And equally so, you can have maybe poor interaction with council. But this is the policy. It's there to protect the Irish language. It's there to allow those community groups, as Councillor Maguire said, those interested organisations who want to promote the language. We're trying to empower those community groups to get out there and promote the language, give residents that responsibility in their own areas if they want to see Irish language signage, and as I said, to protect the actual language itself. And I think, you know, some of the commentary this month, it's just pathetic at this stage for elected representatives who very short-sighted not to see that the Irish language community is growing and is going to become an increasingly vibrant and more important part of our society. And so to try and just every month derail it is just, I think it's very poor leadership. And I want to just finish with a quote that a nation is a very complex thing. It's not made up of just one blood or one race or one language. It's like a river with lots of tributaries that flow in and out. And so that's what we must keep in mind whenever we discuss these types of policies. We're trying to cater for the entire community of Fermanagh and Omagh, the entire district, and that includes the Irish language community, which I must say I'm very proud of every time I see growth and achievement and promotion. So fáilte mé an sinné, but tá mé anna mí háasta leis an leis an droch féisiocht atá teacht ó lucht an freastar a gurmágad.
Thank you. Next we go to Councillor Donald O'Coffey on WebEx.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think this discussion has been very disappointing. I warned when this policy was going through that I feared that it would lead to the language becoming a political football. And it has to be said that this is precisely what's happening. And I really question whether it was by design. This policy lacks ambition for the language, for a start. It lacks a focus on encouraging people to use language. The language doesn't belong to any one community; it belongs to all of us. And I'm quite angry when I see such a low response rate for the Irish language in these areas. 50% of the streets didn't return a single vote for Irish language, and we surely should be about, if we have a policy to encourage people to use different languages, Irish language, Ulster Scots, we should be trying to encourage people to use it and to explore it and to develop their command of it. This policy, like, yes, it comes back every month and this happens, but it's actually written into the policy. I warned this would happen. It makes it into political football because it becomes a decision that we have to then authorize, because this exclusion clause, which had to be put in because of concerns around the equality aspects, has itself become a mechanism around which the language is now the focus of allegations on one side. We've heard already, this is the equivalent of painting curbstones. On the other side, we hear banging drums. This is all wolf messages, or, dog whistles. And it's doing the language no good at all. And I know lots of other Irish speakers who do not agree with this policy, who think that we should have a policy around the issue that Chris referenced there, which is around public spaces. We don't have a policy on bilingualism in public spaces. We have a policy around street signs. That's not the same thing. And the policy should be general. It shouldn't just be this way. And we should try to encourage all communities to feel ownership of all the languages that we share, including new languages that's come to our country. And I just feel very disappointed by this whole discussion because it's doing the language no good at all. And I have to say, the Republic of Ireland has had Irish dual language road signs in every corner for 100 years, and the Irish language has almost never been weaker. So I think we need to think about what way do you encourage people to use the language? And I don't think this is the solution. It is about trying to find new ways to make it relevant to people and to encourage all people to see how they're connected to it or could use it. So it's very disappointing seeing this.
Thank you. Next we go to Councillor Stephen McCann on WebEx.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. And yes, yet another environmental services meeting and yet another prolonged unnecessary debate around the dual language policy. And it's been mentioned already that of all the reports that come before this committee and indeed the other committees, there's no report gets as much scrutiny and debate and negative commentary than this particular policy here, especially from the Ulster Unionist Party, it has to be said, Chair. And you have to ask yourself why. And I think that the commentary that happens in the chamber does trickle out into the streets. And to that end, I want to bring to the chair, to the committee's attention, a number of dual language signs that were defaced and damaged and stolen within a number of hours have been erected on the Rossnareen Road in Thrillick, and I think that the language that we use in the chamber and the stances that we take and the commentary that we make does trickle out into the streets. And there you have the signs being damaged and defaced with sectarian graffiti and all sorts, So I think that we have to be mindful of our language. The policy is here. The policy has been implemented, and yes, some councillors mightn't agree with the policy, but it's there, and we had to show leadership in the chamber. Yes, something as beautiful as the Irish language. It's really, really sad to see it being politicised in this way. But whenever we're using emotive language in the chamber, that's how it happens. We have to show leadership, and I know from engaging with language activists in my own area, these signs are being well received, and it's just unfortunate that they've been defaced in this way. So every month, like come March, we can go through the same procedure again. Really, really disappointing and frustrating, Chairman. There's almost 45 minutes gone, whatever it is now of this here meeting, and it's just getting tedious at this stage, to be honest.
Thank you. Next we go to Councillor Josephine Deacon on WebEx as well.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for allowing this very extended debate on what I consider to be a very important topic. Chair, a minority language is something that has to be protected and has to be, conservation measures have to be put in place to protect minority languages. Because if we don't do that, languages become dead and extinct in the same way that we seek to preserve our various species of birds and animals. Language is a living thing, and it's something that needs to be protected. And strangely, I was listening to a very interesting debate on BBC Radio Ulster over the weekend, and it was talking about the 1901 and 1911 census, which also recorded the number of Irish speakers in the whole of Ireland at that stage. And what impressed me at that stage was the very significant number of people from Protestant traditions who spoke Irish and who promoted the Irish language purely because of the wonderful beauty of the language and the fact that if they knew the language, it would give them access to Gaelic literature and poetry and so many things that can be expressed in Irish that can't be expressed in any other language. So, and I mean, I do want to pay tribute to members of the Unionist tradition who have to this day promoted Irish language, particularly people like Linda Irvine, who actually teaches Irish. Councillor O'Coffey is right. The Irish language belongs to all of us. It is not the gift or the preserve of any political party. And I think it would be a great step forward, Chair, if we as a community, divided as we are, could think of the Irish language as something that we can share and something that together we can progress. And it is true that if a language is visible in the form of street signs or signs in our public spaces, it does bring it to people's consciousness. And I think that anything that we as a council can do to increase the visibility of our language needs to be supported. So those are my comments, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we go to Councillor Earl Thompson on WebEx.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I just want to lend my support to Councillor Elliott and Councillor Robinson, just with regard to the extra column. I don't think anyone has anything to fear from that extra column being put in, whether it's for a councillor or an occupier. It's just for information purposes, and it's just for our benefit. And whether people like it or not, it is a divisive issue out there, and it is the policy of the council by a majority of people. But that doesn't say we're not going to have our say as the various different political parties in this issue, and we'll stand by our stance. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we go to Councillor Barry McElduff in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair. Previous speakers have said that the visibility of the Irish language is very important. And you would think that road names and place names are something that we're all interested in. You know, it's a unifying aspect, you would think, of culture. And just a wee anecdote from today. I was in Enniskillen throughout the afternoon and took a walk down the town. And I was going past a restaurant, a Bialan, and there was a big extended table with about 20 adults around it in this restaurant. And one of them summoned me in, and it was an Irish language conversation circle, Circle Cora, right in the heart of Inniskillen, where people were speaking proudly the Irish language in a conversation circle, which takes place regularly. So they're not hiding. They don't want to hide. They're out and about in public. And historically, you know, it can't be denied that there has been a history of putting down the Irish language and diminishing it. So it is disappointing to see this continue. And recently, I was talking to somebody in Oma as well, and they said that there was a trip from the Irish Language Youth Club in Oma to the Share Village ice rink just prior to Christmas. I think there was 156 young people went on that trip from Oma. It was an Irish-speaking trip. And as a public representative, I have to say that I am being lobbied by people in Enniskillen right now and in Oma, thinking that the council doesn't do enough to promote the Irish language. So I think the Irish language rights are being demanded by the people.
Thank you, bye. Danny here, Councillor Armstrong, you had your light on just before I turned on, Councillor Michael Duff, so I'm just going to allow you in here.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a response to an issue raised by Councillor McCann, the defacement of the signs. Just the Ulster Unionist Party would not support that in any way, and no such property should be defaced, so we condemn that unreservedly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Deanna. And Seamus, you've been in before on this, so I'm not going to let you back in.
I just wanted something clarified in relation to the proposal that's been made by the unionist group, and it's about the Axter line put in. I have no problem in saying I put in a number of them, and thankfully all of them were very successful and passed no problem. I'd have no problem with me it being put in that a councillor had done it. The only concern I would have in that, we'll say a road with that had 4 residents or 4 properties, and one of them puts it in. Would that not almost identify who had put it in? We'll say there was 3 unionists, taken that none of the unionists had put it in and 1 nationalist on the road. Would that end up identifying who actually put it in?
It would give them over 15% because that would be 25%.
I know it would, but would it also, would there be a risk there? Could the officer just maybe...
Okay, I'm not letting anybody else in on this. I'm going to go back to the officer, John Boyle, on this.
Chair, I haven't been in as a point of clarity, just if you didn't mind, but I accept your decision.
Sorry, okay, I'll let you in there, Mary.
Thanks, John. It was just, and my apologies. I missed Diana's contribution there. My phone just rang, but I did just want clarity. I like Seamus, I have no issue whether it's from an occupier of the road or a councillor. Indeed, sometimes I'd imagine the occupiers might approach the councillor in many cases, but is that information not readily available to anyone who requests it of the director? Because I think this came up maybe in one other month. So that is my query regarding that. But overall, I can't see there being a problem with a councillor or a resident. But I missed Diana's just segment, if it could be summarised to me. And just to say to everyone, this is filtering into the community. I have a very, what I would call, busy and varied house here, from the very old to the very young. And it's having a negative impact on young people going forward and a negative attitude. And we sat up here, and I was reared with supporting all sports, all cultures, everybody was equal, and I was oblivious to a lot that was actually going on around me as a child, to the extent that we had a post office which was Royal Mail in the middle of a village of Trillick, and when there was a goal scored by Ray Houghton, as I put out a green, white and gold flag, nobody said anything, including my parents, because they knew how innocent it was. So my children, I'm seeing a flavour coming through. The lionesses were playing, and we had visitors in of a young nature of other children, and they were a wee bit disingenuous. 1, to ladies that were playing football, and 2, to English ladies winning. And it didn't stick on me to the same little boys that sat in our house and give them a few lessons to take back to their own houses to educate their parents. But this is trickling down. So as leaders of the council, The unionists don't support it, and I totally accept that. But every month there's a budget there. When the budget is done, we'll have to revisit it. It might be something that has worked or hasn't worked, but as leaders, we're not showing leadership, and that is filtering down to the children of our communities, and it's not beneficial at all. So I think I have to mention that. But Diana's segment, I missed John, my apologies, if you could just summarise briefly. And I think if somebody wants to know whether it's by an occupant or a councillor, they're free to ask the director. I don't know why it has to be in their report. It's just more work for the officers. Thank you.
I'll summarise what Councillor Armstrong said. She, on behalf of the Ulster Unions Party, condemned the defacing or damaging of any road signs, whether dual language or single language.
Thank you, Chair.
I'm going to go to Officer John Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose two queries outstanding, one from Councillor Maguire or from Councillor Green, sorry, in relation to would you be able to identify the person? I suppose, given the example that Councillor Green has given, yes, I think in that case it could be the individual who requested the dual language signage could be identified if we were dealing with such small numbers. And secondly, in relation to Councillor Gardaí's query, is the information is readily available. I already have supplied it to one member from previous applications, and yes, at the request of any member, I can provide the details as to whether it was a councillor or whether it was an individual resident who requested the dual language signage.
Okay, thank you, John. And so we have. Sorry? Which proposal? Councillor Elliott. Okay, I'm going to let you in briefly here. He's a man.
No.
Councillor Bell.
Just bearing in mind the comments by the director and Councillor Green, could I propose an amendment that we show on the report a C or an R of the successful applicants that do meet the criteria? That should then prevent any of the concerns Councillor Green's concerned about of identifying individuals. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, can you repeat that again? Sorry.
I'd like to propose an amendment to Councillor Elliott's proposal relating to a C and an R on the report, that we only show a C and an R if the application for a dual sign is successful. Therefore, then it wouldn't be possible to identify an individual because it would have to meet the 15% threshold anyway. So, thank you, Chair.
Okay, and you're happy with that, Councillor Elliott? Okay, thank you. So the first proposal we have is.
Surely that proposal, the example I give, the one person would be 25% of the road. So that proposal makes no difference to the scenario I put forward. And surely that's going against the what do you call that, data regulations and all, where you're identifying people. Where we would, I don't think, have any right to be identifying people. And in that scenario, you would be.
They're going to be able to identify them anyway, in my opinion, if there's only 4 people living on the road and one votes for it and they see this paper presented before us, the figures are there. But I'm not going to go into this debate anymore.
Well, can we have the report in confidential then, please?
I'm going to go back to Officer John Boyle here for a second, just to clarify.
Yeah, Chair, certainly, Chair, again, if members decide that this is a report that should be taken to confidential business, that we can certainly do that, yes.
Right, this is starting to become very protracted. Councillor Maguire, I'm briefly going to let you in here.
Certainly is getting protracted, Chair, but just on the back of the request for it to be in confidential, this report, regardless of whether we like it or don't like it, is in line with the council policy, and we usually make our policies to affect our public out there. I certainly don't think we need to be hiding this. Confidential is strictly for matters that are not for readily available to the public, usually because of some financial or legal complication. I don't think there's any financial or legal complications in this report. And given that it's in line with the council policy, I would seriously object to it going into a confidential report. Chair.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to go to the vote here on the two proposals. So the first proposal is the adoption of the recommendations proposed by Councillor Withers, seconded by Councillor Green. I'm expecting dissent on that, so if you could set up a vote, please. It's not a recorded vote, so it will not make any difference. Seventeen 11. 6-4, 9 against Chamber. 2 against. Yeah. Okay, so that's 17 votes for, 11 votes against, so that resolution is passed. That's the adoption of the recommendations. The second proposal is to have councillors informed as to who nominated a road for consideration and to move it to confidential. Is that not the confidential, just have it? So if we could set up a vote then, that's not to move it to confidential, but to have it indicated whether it was a councillor who initiated the consultation on a road or a resident. Sorry, it might have been occupier was the actual wording that was used, but I get the cast. Five, 4, 8 against. Okay. Happy enough of that? Yeah. Okay. So that's 14 for and 14 against. So that gives the chair a casting vote, and the chair is going to vote for.
Chair,
Sorry?
it's Catherine Kelly here. The vote didn't come up on my computer.
Um, um, I'm not sure. The vote's gone, unfortunately, Catherine. That's it. It's been decided.
Through the chair, we have taken votes again when that has happened. My vote worked okay, Chairman, and I'm happy with my decision. We have taken votes again when that hasn't happened. I know it's infuriating for members, but thankfully mine's working at this end anyway, but it's entirely your call, as you know. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. But usually, in those ones there, somebody has indicated before the time's up that they're not able to vote. Is the usual difference, but I'm going to bring Councillor Maguire's indicating here.
Margaret Carley, just to suggest that we move on. Obviously, next month we will have another rehearsal of the same saga, so we will have the opportunity to overturn that vote, I believe. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, Councillor Maguire. We'll move on to item 6.1, Estate Matters, and that's John News, Officer John News.
Thank you, Chair. Standing paper here in terms of estate matters. So a number of items for decisions set out in section 2 and a number of matters for information set out in section 3. So if I just take you through section 2, first one is 2.1, a request to extend a 15-year lease at Connolly with Connolly Enterprise Limited at an annual rental of £4,000 per annum for the Connolly Play Area site. And so it recommended that that lease is renewed for a further 15-year period. The current lease is due to expire on the 31st of May of this year. At 2.2, 2 properties have within the council's estate that have been identified as surplus to requirements. Those are Old Jail Square in Omagh, and which is a site of approximately 1,370 square metres, and a second former civic amenity site in Brookborough with an approximate size of 510 square metres, and recommended that both properties be declared as surplus and that we progress in accordance with the council's asset and disposal policy. 2.3 then, Cardiller Quay and Lisnaskea. There's a reciprocal agreement there with Waterways Ireland, who maintain the jetty and slipway at that site. And following inspection, Waterways Ireland have identified a number of health and safety issues, closed the facility in September 2022, and now propose to undertake some works to ensure the safe use of the slipway. And as part of that, they intend to remove a marine section of the jetty and temporarily strengthen the main walkway extending from the shoreline, and they're seeking council permission to carry out those works. The Waterways Ireland have also indicated that they have plans to deliver future capital works at this site over the next number of years, and they will bring details of those proposals to a future meeting of the Environmental Services Committee. 2.4, again, a short-term service level agreement with Maharavili Community Development Association in relation to the community use of a shed and recreational facilities at Kellyfold expires on 31st of March of this year, and it's recommended that this agreement be extended for a further 18-month period to 30th of September 2024, and that's timeframe is being discussed with the Community Development Association. 2.5, then a request, following the request for quotation exercise for land letting agent services for 2023, Connie Ecker recommended that Pollock RICS be appointed to handle the letting of lands, of council lands across the estate. The agent fee will be dependent on the rental income that we achieve and will not exceed £750. 2.6, seeking approval to proceed with expressions of interest for mobile catering provision at Fermanagh Lakeland Forum. And then at 2.71 to 3, 4 and 5, a number of requests for the use of council property. The first one there is Oma Motor Club has requested permission to use a number of council lands for a spring rally on Saturday the 25th of February, and also permission to park trailers at Ecclesville Forest on that same date. Again, set out the conditions for that license agreement and the fees that would be associated with that. And those are in line with the previous charging regime that would have applied when the process was managed by Forest Service. It's also noted that the rally organiser will be making a presentation to the Safety Advisory Group separately from this process on Friday of this week. With a number of retrospective approvals for use of council property. BBC had carried out some filming at Ardone Theatre in January, and then also downtown radio request for an information session at the weekend past in Oma, and finally Enniskillen Royal Grammar School requested permission to use Hollyhill Car Park. That's actually yesterday evening for a school open night. At section 3 then we have a number of items for information. The first is in relation to Belnalek Quay, and it's a notice of an application for planning permission that has been served on the council by Waterways Ireland in relation to proposed installation of wastewater pump out kiosk on its lands at Belnalek Quay, and that's subject to a reciprocal agreement with the council. And finally then at 3.2, members will recall that in December they granted approval to Loch Earn Landscape Partnership for the installation of a mural at Round O, but members had asked at that stage that further information on the nature of the mural and the artwork be provided to members. So the details of that, LILP have now provided those details in Appendix 3, and it's there for information. So recommendations is set out within Section 9, Section 9.1, point 1 through to point 7, that Council approves the request is set out, and at Section 9.2 the Council notes the two items as described already in relation to Waterways Ireland and the mural at the Round O. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. And first up is Councillor Anthony Feely in the chamber.
Yeah, thanks. I just looking to them, and I'm glad to see Connolly, the area side, is being leased out again and doing great work up there. So just propose a recommendation, all in one, if it suits.
Thank you, Anthony. Next we go to Councillor Bernice Swift.
I'll gladly second the recommendations and note the others documents. And I think the double-sided mural is lovely, as proposed by the partnership board. It's very, very good and for all to see. Can I just ask one quick question, John, on the expressions of interest going out for the Lakeland Forum? Do we have anything in terms of catering down there at the moment? I'm just not up to speed and haven't been down there lately. And I know the coffee and treats and Fousey's vans are trending at the moment, and it'll be great to see it. But do we have anything down there at the moment?
No, Chair, at the moment there's nothing down there, and that's why we're going out for an
Very good.
expression of
Well,
interest.
that's very welcome. So great. Look forward to that. Guramagat.
Thank you, Bernice. Next we have Councillor Paul Robinson in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair. No, John, you see the amenity centre in Brookbar? Community group was after that a couple of years ago, and then they were told that there was no deed for it, so you've got a deed now for it.
Sure. As to the status of the deeds, so this declaring the asset as surplus to requirements will then trigger the disposal policy. One of the steps within the disposal policy is that we'll go through a process of due diligence to make sure that all of the title deeds and the leases are there and that there aren't any outstanding charges on the lands. So the disposal policy will take us through all of that process, and if there are interested parties out there who would seek to acquire it, then they'll have an opportunity then to bid for the land.
Ireland inform them. So, thank you, John.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Next we go to Councillor Victor Warrington in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things. Certainly welcome the extension of the agreement with Mahraveely Community Development Association for the shed and recreational facilities at Killavole. The association is doing great work there. Also, the Oma Motor Club is obviously requesting the permission to use Jinkin, Rockogrally, Mullifad and Doon. I'm sure I'm not the only councillor here that has concerns. As somebody who has fought hard to get a good laneway certainly into Jenkin, we all know, and nobody enjoys rallying as much as I would, but as long as the surfaces are left, are returned to the condition that they were found in, because rally cars are not that easy on them. So we certainly do want to see the laneways into the likes of Jenkin cut up again. It got to a stage at one time that a car could struggle to get into it. They did need a 4x4 to get there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Victor. Next we go to Councillor Emmett McAleer on WebEx.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can hear me all right.
Yeah, you're fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Perfect. No, I'm just coming from the consultation in the Owen Killieu Centre here in Gorton, but yeah, no real objection to this one. I would thank John just for cooperating with me and working back on relation to the Lough Erne Landscape Partnership one, and indeed to help themselves. I think that's something definitely that is to be welcomed. Obviously, anything that celebrates local art, the local environment and biodiversity, and has such positive community impacts and mental health impacts is to be welcomed and supported. But I would maybe request that the proposer and seconder would amend their proposal and delay or defer on deciding on recommendation 9.12, which is the property at Giles Square, the old Giles Square, Barrack Lane in Oma. Myself, I'd made a proposal not that way long ago, and I believe Councillor Thompson actually seconded this, that we would meet with the Save Oma Jail group. It was unanimously agreed across the council, and I would think that this would be a potential retrograde step to dispose of this particular facility without having consulted with this group. I don't think it's a pressing matter that we do it tonight, so I would actually propose that we postpone dealing with this item until such times as we've met with Save Oma Jail Group. Obviously, they would have specialist local and historical knowledge on the subject, and unfortunately, we've seen how that can cost the council when we look back on maybe the council's handling of the Green Road public right-of-way legal case. But I've been in contact with the Save Oma Jail Group, and that's something they would be acutely aware of and acutely concerned about. So I would make that as a proposal, or well, hopefully I'll not need to make it as a separate proposal. Hopefully the proposer and seconder will agree to amend the original proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Before I'm going to go back to the proposer and the seconder, I'm going to bring in Officer John News, who may have some points which could clarify the position with the Jail Square.
Thank you, Chair. Really, just for information, I know as part of this process bringing this forward, we have looked at these two proposals, how they would sit alongside the place shaping plans that we're currently developing for Oma and for Enniskillen. And this was just one of the points to note, is that the old Jail Square yard does sit within the Oma conservation area. So we do recognise that would bring planning constraints for any purchaser should it proceed to disposal.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the proposer, Councillor Anthony Foley.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. No, I'd have no problems with that if he wants to leave it out
So-
for the time being for more information. It doesn't.
So
If it's okay with
asking,
officer.
you're going to ask, is that acceptable, John? We defer to Jail Square for? And we're defer, we obviously need a purpose to defer it, so that we can give the
Yeah.
Oma jail group. Sorry, Emmett, come you back in and explain which group you want us to liaise with first to see if they're in a position to purchase this.
Steve Oma Jail, and I believe it was either the November or December meeting, I think the proposal was made at, but it's there on the books, and it was unanimous.
Okay, thank you, Emmett. And I'm going to go, Bernice, are you happy? Bernice is happy to second
So
that.
hopefully it's nothing too contentious, it's just a fairness decision until a later date.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. Next we go to Councillor Seamus Green in this chamber.
Yeah, just on 2.7.1, the Oma Motor Club request for the rally at Jinkin, Cornagrally, Mullafad and Doon Forest. I think I know the answer to this, but why are they requesting that from council, given that as Forest Service owns them forests? And is it, as I suspect, that all of them lanes is now in the possession, maintenance possession of the council, and how we ended up in a contract that we have to maintain all of them lanes defies belief, but there you go. Forest Service are very clever at what they do. But can I just get an answer to that, why they're asking us?
Okay, thank you, Seamus. That's something I hadn't been chairing. I might have been bringing up myself.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, as long as we have a license agreement certainly for Jenkin Wood. So I think, but the request has obviously come in from Oma Motor Club for all of those areas. I'll need to check with our property team if any of the other areas are also included within license provisions. I know certainly that we have a license agreement in place for Jenkin Wood, and obviously then Ecclesville Forest Park is part of council estate as well. I can confirm separately or outside of the meeting about the other particular areas, Knocknagrally, Mullafad and Doon.
Okay, thank you, John. Next we go to Councillor Eamon Keenan on WebEx. Hello, Eamon, are you able to come in? Okay, I'll pass Eamon and I'll go to Councillor Josephine Deegan and then I'll come back to him.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to thank John for his report. I want to come in and support Councillor Emmett McAleer in his comments regarding the old Jail Square, Barrack Lane area. Officer John Hughes is quite correct in what he says, that this is part of the Oma conservation area, and actually really a very significant part of the history of Oma, the county town of Tyrone. I certainly do not want to see this property disposed of, and yes, it is surplus to requirements, but at the same time, I feel that there is a very valuable historical asset here. John Hughes is quite right that there would be quite significant planning restrictions on what could be provided in that area, given that it is a conservation area. And I think it's right that we defer this particular agenda item for further discussion. I just wondered if there was any potential which could be explored, community asset transfer, because I know that there is a lot of interest and a lot of concerned groups within the community who want to see this property preserved and restored. So I support Councillor McAleer in that regard. In relation to the retrospective approval for use of council property at 1 Market Street, Omagh, for an information session by Downtown Radio and Fibrous, I was in Omagh town on Saturday afternoon, and the town was actually buzzing. And I was in a shop, and one customer explained to me that she had just won a voucher for £50, courtesy of Downtown Radio stroke Fibrous. So I think, I welcome these type of events, and it certainly, the shopper was extremely pleased about it, and, I think these things are good. So happy to support that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Josephine. I'm just going to go to Officer John News again.
So, Chair, just for information, the Councillor Deehan referred to community asset transfer. Before we can consider a community asset transfer, the asset would have to be declared as surplus, but community asset transfer would be one of the provisions within the acquisition and disposal policy. So it's not something that the declaration of surplus asset has to happen before we would then move to look at a community asset transfer. So it really just for information, but as I say, we can bring a further report back on that particular item.
Okay, thank you, John. I'm going to try Eamon Keenan again. Councillor Eamon Keenan. Sorry, are you hearing him on WebEx? If somebody would come in, if you're hearing Eamon on WebEx, we're not hearing him in the chamber.
No, we're not hearing him, Chair.
Yeah.
Eamon, I'm going to apologise if I'm going to give you a
Eamon
chance.
said in the group, sorry, Chair, Eamon said in the group that his mic's not working. If somebody can IT could look at it.
Okay, we'll pass that on. Next we go to Councillor Earl Thompson.
Thank you again, Chair. And on this occasion, Councillor McAleer's right. I did second that one about the Jail Square issue. And I suppose it is, the area conservation, a very historic quarter of Omagh. So it's very important that we get this right. And just with regard to the group that wants to meet the council, I did second that proposal by Councillor McAleer, and happy that that happens hopefully within the next number of weeks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Earl. I'm going to give Eamon one more chance here. Eamon, can you try again, please? Apologies, Eamon, you're not able. We're not able to hear you, so I'm going to have to pass. With the amendment, so we've heard the proposal with the amendment, and I'm not anticipating any dissent, so I'm assuming everybody's in agreement. There's no dissent, so that's that resolved. Next, we go to Building Control and Licensing, and it's Officer John Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. It's the standard report from Building Control and Licensing. And you'll see in Appendix 1, the Building Control report, and Appendix 2, the Licensing report. So, Chair, it's recommended that the Council notes the report on Building Control and Licensing for the period 15th of December 22 to the 25th of January 23. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Is that a note or
it's for note?
Okay, so looking at proposer and a seconder. Councillor Thomas Maguire and Councillor Victor Warrington. Lovely, thank you very much. Sorry, Keith.
Question around the mobile street trading licenses. Does everybody that has these wee vans that Bernice talked about earlier on have to get a trading license to trade?
Sorry.
Chair, yes. Mobile trading licenses, they need, if they're trading within 10 metres of the public road, they need a trading license, which is issued by our licensing department. Otherwise, they do need to be registered with environmental health, depending on the type of business that they carry out. So if it were a food outlet, they will need an environmental health certificate also to enable them to trade. And I know in relation, there have been a number of queries in relation to Enniskillen here, and particular points in Enniskillen. The location at which some of the traders are on private property and are 10 metres away from the public road, and therefore it excludes them from the requirement to have a licence.
No, obviously, there's certain areas where there is people paying considerable rates to the council, paying the rates, and quite a number of them. And then, as I say, people can rock up then and park up their vans and do their business, and fair play to them for going down that route. But for people that's established and they're a long time paying their rates, it's unfortunate. It is taking away their business, I suppose. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Keith. It's a very tender topic, that. We'll quickly get away from that. Next, we come on to this is an update from the motion from, I think it was our December meeting around the A5 Western Corridor Transport, and go to Officer John News.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, item 8.1 is for information, and the purpose of the report really is just to provide members with an update on activities that Council has undertaken in respect to the A5 Western Transport Corridor Scheme, and in particular since the most recent motion was resolved in December 2022. I suppose just the key points that members may wish to note. I'll not go through all of the detail that's set out in the report of the background, which members will be familiar with. Obviously, more recently, we have responded to DFI consultations and also submissions into the Planning Appeals Commission mid-inquiry meeting in November of last year. Also continue to work with other local authorities through the A5N2 Cross-Border Committee, one of whose aims is to ensure that the scheme is delivered, the A5 Western Transport scheme is delivered without further delay. As part of that cross-border committee meeting, members will recall from previous updates that the committee is seeking an urgent and early meeting with the Minister for Transport in the south of Ireland, Minister Eamon Ryan, to discuss the need for urgent progress on both parts of the A5 and N2 Western Transport Corridor. The Secretariat function for the Cross-Border Committee had been with this council for the last couple of years, and in the autumn time of last year actually moved across to Monaghan County Council. So I've been working with the Monaghan County Council, and I know they are progressing an early date with the Minister for that meeting. More recently then, since the motion, officers have been progressing a number of specific items to bring the motion to life, and that includes things like establishing a dedicated web page in the council's website, just to bring together for residents all of the information on the A5 Western Transport Scheme from a council perspective. We are developing posters in support of the A5 Western Transport Corridor, and would intend to display those in key council buildings across the district. Also a number of downloadable template letters of support for the A5 Western Transport Corridor to both the Planning and Appeals Commission, but also letters of support for the DFI Permanent Secretary for residents who wish to voice their support for the project, and to facilitate those returns. We're also looking at installing post boxes across a number of our key council buildings within the district, and we have a schedule of social media posts and associated media resources. Most recently, actually, the chair facilitated a video that's gone up and has been shared by a number of groups in the last couple of days. Members will also be aware of work, and this was discussed at the council meeting last night, that's been undertaken by other community groups, including sports organisations such as Tyrone GAA, and the campaign there for the A5 Enough is Enough campaign. And just to note that there was an online petition that was launched by that campaign group back at the end of January, And as of today, I think the number of signatures on that petition is calling obviously for the early delivery of the A5 scheme is up to over 7,600. And so we do continue to share the information from the petition through our social media resources. So information is presented, or the report's presented for information only, just to keep council up to date.
Thank you, John. Very topical subject. Councillor Brian McElduff was the first to indicate, but he turned his light off there.
Thanks, John. And John, our director, said it's for information only. Turned my light off, but we're going to have a few words on it, obviously. Thank John for writing this paper, for producing this paper. It has been well received. It's in the public domain. It has been shared with, for example, the A5 Enough is Enough GEA campaign. Just to repeat that message from last night, nobody owns the campaign. The GEA took an initiative, fair play to them, but I know they, like us, would encourage other community organisations and other sporting bodies to either be part of their campaign or to set up your own campaign. That is their earnest desire, is that the widest possible ownership is taken of...
Testing me, Mike. Just testing the mic at the request of IT.
Yeah, sorry, Barry, just hold there a second. Thank you, Eamon, that's brilliant. You're loud and clear.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Sorry, Barry.
Just to make that point, that I know that the organisers of that campaign are very adamant that there is shared ownership of the campaign, and they are keen to see other groups develop, their own strands of a campaign. So that's really important. Thanks to John for the publication of this. Also, I wonder when is the next meeting of the inter-council A5N2 group, and it has passed, to Monaghan Council for Secretariat work, etc. Brian McKenna is now the chair. Previously, Glenn, Councillor Campbell here, was the chair. So is there a date for that meeting? It doesn't involve members of the council who are not members of that group, but just to seek clarity or assurance that there is energy in that group as of now. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Just in relation to a date, we don't have a confirmed date, but we have been working closely with Monaghan County Council over the last couple of months. As I understand it, the Monaghan County Council also discussed this issue at their January meeting, and at that stage, certainly, they were what they were waiting for was an announcement from for the national development budgets down south to see if any money was going to be forthcoming for the N2 portion of the project in the 2023 allocation. And subject to the announcement in that respect, then they were going to press ahead with the date, or looking to confirm a date with Minister Ryan, and then that would be, I suppose, a date for the committee meeting. So the answer is we don't have a confirmed date at the minute, but it is active on Monaghan County Council's agenda.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to WebEx now. The first speaker on WebEx is Councillor Josephine Deegan.
Well, thank you, Chair, and I want to thank John for his report and for all the work that has gone into compiling the report on all the activities that this council has engaged in support of the early delivery of the A5 Western dualling project. I think that a tribute has to be paid to the Tyrone GAA Enough is Enough campaign, because they have taken the initiative on foot of many of local GAA members being killed tragically on that road. So it is literally a matter of life and death. And I do believe that the Tyrone GAA will be a trailblazer in terms of igniting other publicity campaigns. But I think there's no doubt that as public representatives, we also need to be extremely active and continue to be extremely active in pushing for the delivery of this project. And I support any means by which we as a corporate body can encourage the general public to take an interest in this, to realise how important their voice is in expediting the delivery of this project so that the decision makers are in no doubt of the need for the project to be delivered as soon as possible, and also the strength of public feeling that is out there at this tragic loss of life, which is simply unacceptable and must stop. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Josephine. And next we go to Councillor Glenn Campbell, also on WebEx.
Thank you, Chairman, and I want to support everything that's been said and add my appreciation to our Director, John Hughes, for his work on this report and for the council staff involved in, I suppose, giving effect to the motion to promote and to support this campaign for delivery of the A5. Just to record my appreciation, I know John continues to work with Monaghan County Council closely, and it'll be good to see, I suppose, the next date, as has been said, of that meeting and the meeting with the Minister. But the campaign is gaining momentum, and I've no doubt that that'll continue. So thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. And next we go to Councillor Stephen McCann, also on WebEx.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. And just a seconder of that motion in December, I just want to again put on record my thanks to the Director for putting meat onto the bones of that motion. And it's great to see the proactiveness of the Council in their work to date. And I look forward just to seeing what comes off in the time ahead. So thanks again, John. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Stephen. Next we go to Councillor Victor Warrington in the chamber. Sorry, Victor, need to turn your light on.
Thank you, Chair. Well, obviously, any progress on the A5 has to be welcomed. As somebody who's travelled it quite a bit recently, it's an absolute disaster of a road. But we also must remember we put a motion in looking to continue the work on the A4 as well, from Ballygolly up to Enniskillen and indeed further afield, if was possible. At the end of the day, when the motorway was first muted, it was going the whole way to Sligo. I don't think we'll ever see it to Sligo in our lifetime, but certainly it would be great if we get the dual carriageway further up the road from Dungannon. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Victor. So Barry proposed the noting, and I'm going to go back. I think it was Josephine was first. Did you second that, Josephine?
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So that's that matter. Next, we come to agenda item 8.2. And just in case anybody's thinking of getting sidetracked, because this topic is to do with assisted bin lifts and the DAERA policy on deposit return scheme. So we will be sticking within those parameters. So don't be trying to fiddle yourself onto some side topic on this. I'm going to pass to Officer John Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, really two items to note. Members last year had approved a revised policy on assisted bin lifts and additional bins for residents who had specific disabilities, medical conditions, or those in large households. And at that time had asked that an update would be brought back to members just on progress with the implementation of that. So really 2.1 just sets out some of the numbers that we have seen coming through the applications, the increase in applications for assisted bin lifts, additional bins for non-recycling waste, and for the larger 360 blue recycling bins as well. Also, some information on the number of reviews that have taken place. This was in line with the 2-yearly review that we would do with residents who already had those additional services, and then also the promotional work that has taken place in terms of through the council's social media channels, Info Magazine, and then also the information available to download from the council website. So the information presented there to note. And then at 2.2, this was really, it was correspondence that came in and from DAERA. This was the UK government response to the second consultation on the deposit return scheme. A number of the key points from within the full government response is included in Appendix 1 to the paper, and some of the, I suppose, just the key highlights from that intended implementation approach. I suppose really the key thing to note is the implementation date starting in October 2025. And I suppose what I would say is that this very much feeds into, and it's already been referenced this evening, that we have a workshop coming up with members looking at service transformation within waste early next week, and deposit return scheme is one of the drivers for that service transformation more generally. So we say that information at 2.2 and the copy of the DRS response is attached for information. Recommended that Council notes both updates.
Okay, thank you, John. I'll go to quickly Councillor Anthony Feely.
Thanks for that, John. And Chair, yeah, I'd be happy enough to propose a recommendation. It's good that people are using the additional, that assisted bin lifts is useful for people. It's not fit to do it themselves, so I'm just glad that we continue doing that. Happy to propose.
Thank you, Anthony. Councillor Mary Gardy on WebEx.
Thank you, Chair. We'll second the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's that matter resolved. So next we go to correspondence. And we've covered 9.11 was covered. What's the next one? Grit piles. John.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In January's Regeneration Community Committee, members had asked or had expressed some concerns about provision of grit piles and grit bunkers across the district, and asked that we'd write to Department for Infrastructure for some further information. So Divisional Roads Manager has written back to us with that information, setting out numbers of grit piles, approximately 3,668 grit piles provided across the district. Notes in the correspondence that those are topped up in September, October of each year, and then replenished either on request or following periods of extreme cold. Further in the correspondence is also noted that the department currently restocks 170 grit bunkers at the start of the winter service season, and again replenishes those following periods of extreme cold. Goes on to note that they're happy to work with the committee and with members if there's any feedback on the locations of existing bunkers, or if there's any suggestions for new bunker locations. I suppose the caution that's noted, and it maybe echoes some of the comments from earlier in the meeting, is that notes are that these are then assessed in accordance with the policy for approval. So the correspondence is provided to note anyway.
Okay, thank you, John. First of all, go to Councillor Seamus Green in the chamber.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I read this letter with amazement. Especially the paragraph where it says, I can advise that approximately 3,668 grit piles are placed in strategic locations in Fermanagh area during the months of September, October each year. I think that's very cleverly stated each year, but they didn't say how many was placed this year, because they certainly weren't placed in the Iron East area this year. I presume in other DEs they weren't either. But even today, I was ringing to get grit piles out onto roads because, as we all know, winter isn't over in February. And I contacted them around Christmas at that bad frost. I contacted them previously to that as well, where grit piles weren't out on any roads in Iron East. They started putting them out after that severe frost was over Christmas and New Year. I don't know when it ended, but when it ended, they come out and started to put grit piles out. They only put them out on a few flat roads. They didn't come up the mountains at all. And then when the second severe frost came, when it was over, they came out and put another few out. So that letter almost is a thing of fiction as far as I can see. So I would like to to the council to write, and I presume, I don't know whether other councillors wants to put in their areas, but all I know about is in the Air and East area. So I would like the council to write back and ask how many grit piles was actually put out in the Air and East area in September and October in 2022, and when exactly did they start putting them out, and when did they complete their job of putting them out, because they haven't, as far as I'm concerned, and I live in probably the most hilly mountainous region in Air and East, they're not out yet. That letter, it's worse than the letters we get from Stormont, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm not happy with that. So that could them questions be asked, and at the end of the letter, can we ask for reassurance that every area in the Fermanagh and Omagh Council District will have the grit piles put out in September, October? Because in my experience, that has never happened in my area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Seamus. Next we go to Councillor Anthony Philly.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I have a few comments to make as well around the Erne West area, my own area. Not too bad, not quite as bad as Seamus is saying there, because we did get our grit piles out in the usual spots. Maybe they were a wee bit further apart than any other year, and must be sparing the grit a wee bit, not as big a piles. So that was one of the problems. And in fairness now, after we used the first frost, they did come back and top some of the second ones up again. And same as Seamus, I live in a mountainy, very hilly area too, so it'll be always hard to get out of my house. So I do use them myself at Glen Cross there. So that was so when you're checking how many in Erne East, do it in Erne West as well. But there's another people in the villages who was contacting me too, in Belcoo and Garrison there, at the housing estates, the wee salt boxes, you know, they were emptied, and they're very slow to come and fill them up again. And I think it's very strict criteria to get them salt boxes in around them places. You have to have the gradient. If it's a flat place, they don't want to put them there at all, and so many people use them. So if they could we could just look and do it, is there any way they could ease off that regulation for that, and even have them on a flat area too, where the footpaths are, because the people's quite willing to use them if the salt or grit is there, you know, but that was more so filling them around the village. This time I found out for me, it wasn't too bad on the roads. But it's all right in the usual spot. There's a few new people around living on hills to get them, and they're very slow to put them in a new place. It's okay where they put them every year, but any new place, it's hard to get them to do it there now. So I found that a bit of a problem as well. It's tough like that. We don't even get the roads gritted, like on the main roads, they're all being gritted, and then we're on the back roads. It'd be great if we could get more of them gritted. I know we can, and I was looking to get some of them roads that there's a lot of traffic using them, but it wasn't even a hope we get them onto the grit, the criteria, or the new roads were gritting. So if we could get as many grit piles as we can as possible, because it was very frustrating for people, because it did last, about 2 weeks there, people can't get to work or can't get to school buses can't get out. My own two boys missed 4 days of going to school because they're going up in the Skillen. No local, since Brala closed, there's no local school, so we're just dependent on that as well, and it's very frustrating now. So I second Seamus' proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Next we go to Councillor Victor Warrington.
Thanks, Chair. Well, I have to say I agree with the previous speakers. Certainly the grit piles, in my opinion, it's been very sporadic the year where they've been put out in the Erne East area, and I would be up around, you know, the Cunyon, to Rusley, that sort of area. I would be up that road quite a bit. And the grit piles, September and October, as Seamus said, is fiction. And certainly I think I support the contacting the FA again. Just on, as Anthony was saying about the gritting roads, I had reason, that a constituent onto me, I had a reason to contact the FA about a road that there's a business on, with approximately 150 employees, numerous 40-foot lorries going in and out daily, and the recent bit of bad weather ahead, they had lots of problems, but unfortunately, again, as the usual answer we get, it was a big no, because there wasn't the volume of traffic on the road that would allow them to grit it, regardless of the fact that it was affecting people going to their work, and it was disappointing. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Next we go to Councillor Bernice Swift.
And I concur with all the comments previously made by councillor colleagues, and totally agree that it's a rather damning indictment on a central government department indeed, and thereafter, considering the massive costs they are and the burden they are to us as a ratepayer, and we are not receiving the service that we pay for. And I totally agree with writing back on this issue, and it's already been mentioned that there's a lack of the salt and the gritting coming out, particularly to the rural areas, and it's just not good enough for our super council areas. So I'd like this department, particularly DFI, to begin to demonstrate some cohesion and enable us out in the rural areas to prosper just like everybody else. I said it before, about the local budgets being the trend. And again, if we were able to disseminate and get on with this work, we would do it. But again, I fully support what's being written back.
Thank you, Bernice. Next we go to Councillor Earl Thompson on WebEx.
Thank you, Chair. Agree with a lot of the other speakers. First of all, I want to propose to note the correspondence from Daniel Healy, and I welcome the correspondence. However, it doesn't, I suppose, satisfy our needs as usual. If you read through it, and obviously the highlight in blue is the criteria, and unless that changes, we're never going to be satisfied with the answers that we're going to get. And it's just not in the rural areas of Fermanagh. It comes into the town of Omagh that I represent, and others do. There's hilly areas in there as well, and I suppose in the outskirts of Omagh, there are similar areas. But this thing about the 1,500 vehicles that Councillor Warrington, that's the criteria. My understanding is it's the 1,500, has to be over 1,500 vehicles in the day to qualify for primary gritting of a rural road. But we had the DEA meetings last Friday, and this is one of these things that we did highlight. Obviously, it was they would call them, some of the DFA staff would call them salt boxes, others would call them grit boxes. I'm not going to get hung up on what the name is. We have called it grit bunkers here as well. But the replenishment of those is an issue, because the recent bad weather there, and when it was discovered that there was no grit in the bin or the box, that was the issue. And then it was a health and safety problem to try and get those replenished when the ice was currently in the ground. And we're not out, as somebody said, I think it was Councillor Green there, we're not out of the winter yet. We could have bad weather before the end of this month or even into March. So I think it's in DFI's interest to get those all replenished. And we did highlight that to them on Friday. With regard to grit piles, that's again a criteria-driven thing with the gradient. And we have some of them in Omagh, and in Omagh town as well, just with the gradient. It isn't steep enough to justify grit piles even be put out on it. But we'll continue. I welcome his statement that he welcomes, that he's willing to work with the committee and councillors individually, maybe. So happy to note and with those comments as well, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Earl. And next we go to Councillor Josephine Deegan, again on WebEx.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I support members' comments and Councillor Green's proposal, Chair. As Councillor Thompson has said, the Omagh councillors had their DEA meeting last Friday, and the issue of grit bunkers and grit piles was discussed in some detail. As Errol has said, Chair, in Omagh town, there are quite a lot of areas that are very hilly. And yes, we do have grit bunkers, but not as many, I feel, as we would need. And the DFI road officials made it quite clear at the meeting that unless the criteria were met for provision of a grit bunker, then it simply would not be provided. So I think that it is time to review that policy, because there are very significant risks to public safety. And I'm thinking of some of the parks and housing developments, some of the older developments where the streets are very narrow and hilly, and there are vehicles parked along the side of the road, and residents risk their lives and damage to their vehicles, and others trying to get out of their parks when there's snow and ice. Now, I do have to acknowledge, Chair, the very significant pressure on DFI Roads staff when it comes to replenishing the salt bunkers and also the grit piles on rural roads. It is resource intensive, and I would urge DFI Roads to consider their contingency plans and recruiting more staff to replenish those salt bunkers when a non-favourable weather forecast is imminent, because, as I say, it is a public health and safety issue, and those policies and protocols need to be revised, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Seamus, you've been in before, but I'll let you in briefly here.
Thank you, Chair. No, there's just to maybe add something for clarity in the latter, that could we find out where a breakdown on the 3,668 grid piles, a breakdown of when and where they were put out, if they were able to do that, because my suspicion is there wasn't anywhere near that amount put out the year. I think that the half of that wouldn't have been put out, and I suspect one of the reasons from talking to some of the workers who do, and I have to say it, do their best in very trying circumstances, and at no time am I ever giving them a touch. It's completely management I to blame for an awful lot of the incompetence. The workers do what they're told, but as far as I know, their overtime, which they depend on for their wages, has been cut back to almost zero. And previously, that was where a lot of the workers actually got their half-decent pay by doing overtime. So even with a cost of living increase in their wages, if that happens, they're still suffering a severe cut, as far as I know, in their wages. And just on that, it might be worthwhile. You'll be regretting asking me in again, John. It might be worthwhile writing to the permanent secretary just to clarify that. Has the DFI road service workers received a severe cut in their overtime, which then relates into what they're fit to do, and that's why a lot of this is happening. It's cutbacks by stealth.
Yeah, thank you, Seamus, and you're happy to go with that, Anthony, as well? Anthony, you're happy to go with Seamus's amendment there? Thank you. And finally, we'll go to Councillor McElduff in the chamber.
Okay, thank you. At our OMA DEA meeting with DFI Roads officials, I highlighted the example of O'Kane Park in Omagh. And there's a fairly steep gradient down the hill in O'Kane Park. And there was actually an incident where a car lost control because of the icy conditions and careered into 3 other vehicles. Now, there's also a community group there where the members are responsible and willing to distribute grit at the dangerous part themselves. You know, they're expressing that willingness, but again, fails to meet the DFI criteria. So, in addition to lobbying DFI to change the criteria to allow the likes of O'Kane Park to fit into that list, maybe we should write to the Housing Executive as well, because there is a precedent, I believe, where the Housing Executive may have offered financial assistance to local groups to acquire salt bins in the past, where they then took responsibility for the distribution of the grit if it didn't meet DFI Roads criteria. I know at least one example where housing executive and supporting communities, work together to achieve that possibility for a housing estate. So I know there's the list of housing estates too in the district that do qualify for that schedule. We should ask for that detail as well. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and I take it you're happy with that, Seamus and Anthony? Yeah. Okay. Okay, we've only had a proposal to note the correspondence. Is there a seconder to second? Paul Robinson. Next, we go on to item 9.2, which is the NIAA priority species list, and go to Officer John News for that.
Thank you, Chair. Just correspondence attached. It's for information and members to note. It's an update published by NIEA on the priority species list reviewed and earlier this year and takes effect at the end of February in 2023. Members may also have seen coverage in the media earlier this week as well. It's been highlighted that it's the first review in over a decade, and I know certainly the review has been welcomed by Ulster Wildlife in terms of some of their comments as well, but the information's for it's to note.
Okay, thank you. And I have Councillor Paul Robinson.
Proposed note.
Thank you.
Question for John.
Yeah, please go ahead.
John, did we, or no, what's, I think it's John Boyle, remember it is, to do with it, maybe we done a letter to the department with the bees, with the native Irish bees. Did we ever get an answer back from them with that?
Chair, I'll check up. I couldn't confirm one way or the other, but I'll certainly check up. I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you directly, Councillor Robinson. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think if you include me and Bernice in that one as well. Okay, and somebody to second that, Councillor Roy Crawford. Okay, next we go on to, that's all the correspondence. We've covered 9.3 earlier. Next we go to any urgent and relevant business, and I've only had one person ask for it to come in on that, and that's Councillor Warrington.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in on this. I know that the ongoing problems in the Greencastle area with regards to the Radian are...
Sorry, but I forgot to check WebEx on that last topic. Victor, I'm just going to stop you there. Emmett, did you want to come in on that one with the birds?
I am not preempting the spokesman here. No, this is in relation to this current, the previous item, Chair. Yeah, I did have my hand up, so I would appreciate
Sorry,
if I could
that's
comment.
my fault. I didn't check WebEx. I'm going to apologise. Please go ahead.
Chair, thank you, Chair. No, it's just in relation to it, and again, yeah, a really worrying report, obviously, with the addition of the addition of quite a number of endangered species there. But what I would point out is that, as noted within the report, that the Wildlife and Natural Environment Act 2011, the department actually has a statutory duty. This is DAERA has a statutory duty to publish a list of these species. Public bodies must take priority habitats and species into consideration and further their conservation as far as is reasonably practical as part of their biodiversity duty under that Wildlife and Natural Environment Act. So in relation to, I suppose, NED, which is one of the statutory bodies that are referenced explicitly on this, it's quite concerning how they would choose to interpret this bit of legislation, given, I suppose, some of the input that they've had on which Council has its sight on, I suppose, across the board. This report, read in conjunction with the Butterfly Conservation's first State of the UK's Butterflies report since 2015, which was also out, I think, last Friday, showed 80% of species were declining in abundance, distribution, or both in the last 50 years. Indeed, monitor species here showing a 17% decrease in abundance, and a 10% decrease in distribution. And as the chief executive of that organisation said, These reports are yet more compelling evidence of nature's decline here. We're totally dependent on the natural world for food, water, and clean air. The state of our species and habitat shows that the natural world is in trouble. We need swift and effective action on this. So when you note some of the flora and fauna that's included in the report that's set in front of us, and referencing just in my own area, the likes of the freshwater pearl mussel, the Atlantic salmon, the brown trout, and the European otter, we've seen in our own lifetimes a shocking destruction of biodiversity. And the fact of the matter is we can no longer stand by and watch this. So I suppose the crux of the matter is what's the department going to do?
Yeah. So I'm not sure we can answer that. Well, John, do you want to hazard a go at that? Officer John News.
Chair, I suppose I can't answer as to what the department is going to do. I know one of the things that has previously been indicated is that the priority species list should feed into the executive's development of a biodiversity strategy. Members will be aware that Council has developed and published its own biodiversity strategy, and we're working through the implementation of that. I suppose from Council's point of view, and I know that I appreciate this isn't what the question is, that officers and within our own projects that we are putting biodiversity up front as part of the early considerations of all of our projects. The indication is that there's a biodiversity strategy to come from NIEA from DAERA. I don't have a timeline for that. There's I suppose a raft of different projects that are underway at the minute. Things like circular economy package. Obviously we had the Climate Change Act in 2022. There's a green growth strategy, but all of those sit alongside and should be complemented by the biodiversity strategy. But I suppose we await to see what comes out in that regard.
Thank you, John. That's a very comprehensive answer at a very short notice. Thank you, Emmett. So now we'll go to any other business. Eamon, your hand's disappeared. Was it something you had your hand up for earlier?
Yeah, no, it's okay, Chair. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Victor.
Thank you, Chair. I know the ongoing problems in the Greencastle area with regards to the Radian are causing a lot of problems in the local community. And as I said at the meeting with the DFI Minister, the sooner we have a ruling as a result of the public inquiry, the better, as it is evident that not everyone in the area is against this project. I know in the last 14 days we as councillors have been contacted by the group, the Quiet Majority, with concerns about ongoing intimidation and threats towards workers on the Dalradian site. I personally have been contacted by 2 employees with this. I have also seen a photograph of 2 individuals recording a video on a mobile phone and verbally abusing individuals only 1 to 2 metres away from them. These threats seem to have intensified in recent weeks following the court's ruling on the Green Road. We as a council must unreservedly condemn this sort of behaviour. At the end of the day, these employees have families, responsibilities and mortgages, and this sort of threat towards them cannot be condoned at a time when there are so much other concerns with the cost of living crisis. I propose that we as a council issue a statement condemning this scandalous behaviour and show support to the workers and appeal for sensible heads at this time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Victor. Matthew Bell.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm happy to propose Councillor Warrington's proposal there. Second that proposal. I know the gold mine is a very delicate issue and there's a lot of strong feelings on it, and I don't want a debate to break out regarding if there should be a gold mine or not. This isn't about that. It's simply about supporting the staff, supporting the people who work there. I was contacted, and in fairness, it's about a year ago now, by a husband of a lady who had to quit her job working up in the Sperrins because of the abuse that she received, and she was put up with it for a while, but eventually she said enough is enough and quit her job.
Chair, point of order here.
Sorry, Emmett, what's your point of order?
Yeah, there's a lot of accusations being bandied about here and absolutely no evidence to support what's being stated here. And I would like to remind these members who are not from the area in question, where was their call for condemnation over the past 10 years when Dalradian has been intimidating systemically?
I'll allow you to
in the
speak
local community?
after.
So I'd like to know where
That's-
is the proof, Chair? This has been sprung on us, and this has happened on other occasions when people have accused me of springing items on people. There's no proof or evidence of any of these wild accusations that are being made, which I would contend are actually quite libelous. So I would
I don't
actually
think they are,
proof
Emmett.
is provided.
Quiet, Emmett. I'm asking you to stop speaking. I will allow you to speak on this topic. I don't believe that anybody has been libelous. They're not accusing any individuals of anything, but they're asking the people
that's
to
exactly
behave in a sensible way towards each other. That's my understanding of what they're proposing, that people behave with some civility towards each other.
That is no way. They're condemning the entire community of Greencastle on the say of employees of a foreign Canadian mining company. That's what they're doing, Chair. And I'm not going to sit here and listen to these outlandish statements without any proof, without any evidence. There has not been one guilty conviction
Emmett,
of
thank you,
anybody
Emmett.
who's been brought to
Thank
court
you.
by this foreign company. So where's the proof, Chair?
Emmett, they're relaying what people have passed on to them. So thank you. Victor, I'm going to let you in briefly to clarify what you're proposing here.
Chair, all I was proposing is that we as a council condemn what we have been told. So is the councillor saying that he calls Dalradian a foreign country? Is all the employees foreign as well? I don't think so. A lot of the employees.
I didn't call it a foreign country. That's a ridiculous statement to make.
Thank you. Matthew, if you would continue, please.
I believe if someone's quoting standing orders, they have to actually say which standing order they're quoting. But nevertheless,
we're going to change the rules tonight, are we? Interesting.
Nevertheless, I'll get back to where I was. Yes, so about a year ago, I had a gentleman contact me, and he basically relayed the information that his wife had to leave her position of employment because of alleged, and I appreciate that there is no conviction yet, but it was alleged abuse and intimidation. And I think, and I think most decent people will agree that no matter where you are employed, as long as that employment is legal, you shouldn't have to face intimidation at work, nor should you feel that you have to leave your job because of that intimidation. No one deserves that. I can't even think about the stress that decision would have had to, or the stress of that decision to be made.
What about the stress the community in Greencastle are under? This is
sorry, Emmett. I'm asking you one final time to wait your turn.
Yeah, this is a completely
Emmett, wait your turn.
A non-entity of a debate.
Emmett, I'm asking you to wait your turn.
One iota of evidence presented. This is once again a UUP propaganda against the people of my area, and I'm not going to stand for it, Chair. It might have stood decades ago when they could ride roughshod over people's.
Emmett, I told you I was going to give you your turn. I'm now going to ask that you're silenced. You can remain in the meeting, but I'm not going to allow you to speak.
Chair, this is okay. Silence me once again when it comes to speaking
Emmett,
about an issue.
You are silencing yourself. I have given you the chance to stay quiet and wait your turn. Am I asking?
Is what it is, Chair.
Please silence Councillor McAleer.
Point of order, Chair. Do we need to take a vote on that, or does that have to be proposed, or can the Chair just rule the silence any member he likes?
Okay, I need somebody within the chamber to. Councillor Roy Crawford's proposing.
Was Councillor Bell even?
Councillor Paul Stevenson seconding.
I oppose that.
Silence Councillor McAleer.
Chair, I oppose that proposal.
It's not a matter of opposing it. It's a matter of it being proposed and the chair accepting
it. It's a matter of a vote, Chair. Read your standing orders. Shambolic that once again the people targeted by councillors from outside the area. Absolutely ridiculous, Chair. What does your party have against the people in Greencastle? That's what I'd like to know. I notice your one DEA member isn't present to speak on it. No sign of any proposals whenever the people of Greencastle were being knocked down, were being attacked in shops. None of that.
Yes, I'm waiting for us. Okay, so Councillor McAleer has been advised and has refused to take that advice, and I've been left with no choice. Would have been given an opportunity to speak, but he has now been silenced, and that's by virtue of Standing Order 25/3. So, Councillor Bell, can you finish, please?
Thank you, Chair. And I'm sorry, yeah, can I start again? Because to be honest, I've kind of lost
Yes,
track
please.
of myself. Yes, I'm happy enough to second Councillor Warrington's proposal. I intended to say I didn't want this to turn into a debate around the gold mine, because it's not about that. It's about supporting our neighbours and the people who live and work in the community. I had a gentleman contact me about a year ago, and he informed me that his wife felt the need to leave her job because of the intimidation and abuse she had received regularly. And I think that's wrong, and I hope the other people in this chamber agree that that's wrong, because that had to have been an extremely stressful decision for her to make, and the stress leading up to that couldn't have been very nice. And I don't even want to think about the impacts on her mental health and the worries she would have had financially. I do have sympathies for those who do have concerns about the gold mine. It is a very complicated issue, and I think everyone should have concerns regarding it. But with all that said, Chair, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'm bringing in Councillor Tommy Maguire.
First reaction is that I would have difficulty in any proposal that drags the council in to resolve the issues as outlined by the other councillors. As Councillor McAleer indicated, it's totally unsubstantiated. We are not aware of the total facts nor any evidence to suggest that we can reliably support either one argument or another. If people are being intimidated to that extent, there is other methods and other agencies to deal with that. I don't believe it's a function of council to sit on a pedestal and condemn on the back of what is unsubstantiated evidence. I'm not saying that it's wrong, but as far as we're concerned within this chamber, I'd find it very difficult to support any proposal that drags the council into issues that can be resolved by other agencies. That's my basic understanding of the situation, Chair, so I wouldn't be supporting the proposal accordingly.
Okay, thank you. Next, we bring in Councillor Bernice Swift.
I concur with the last remarks too. I do think it's unsubstantiated. There aren't enough facts presented in front of us, and I would share the same sentiment that you have expressed, in that nobody should suffer going to work or coming from work. Similarly, the campaigners who have been doing the same have been at the receiving end of some serious harassment and intimidation and physical and verbal abuse also. I am aware of that. I can categorically state about that, but I can't on the other business presented. Can I just ask this question? The email that went out from the silent majority, did absolutely everybody receive that? I didn't. You did? Did everybody else? Yeah, I didn't receive that, but anyway. Why am I being singled out?
I never received it, anybody, please, just
You didn't either? Right, okay. Right, I can't support, I won't support on this occasion. Gurmagat.
Okay, thank you, Bernice. Councillor Alex Baird.
Chair, I've listened intently to this and to all the speakers and maybe shouters, but I would like to point out that there's been an allegation that the entire community of a geographical area are being castigated as a result of this proposal, whereas I listen to it and read it, that it is criticising and condemning the few who are involved in this. It's not castigating a total community by any sense. I presume that Councillor Warrington can confirm that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we go then to Councillor Eamon Keenan on WebEx.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as previous speakers have said, there's absolutely no evidence to support these claims by the UUP. It's totally unsubstantiated. But what I have seen is evidence of Dalradian staff attacking Greencastle local with a car. I've seen video evidence of that, and the police were very unwilling to do anything about that. So I think, that as Tommy has quite rightly said, this is not for the council to decide on. We should not be making decisions for any business, any corporate business, to protect their employees. That is their own. Yes, we were here to fight for a community, but unsubstantiated claims cannot come before this council, and we cannot condemn any of those unsubstantiated claims. So I'll be voting against it, and I'd like to think everyone with any sense who's not a cheerleader of Dalradian, and it looks like only the cheerleaders of Dalradian got the emails, because I surely didn't. Thank you.
Thank you, Eamon. Next we go to Councillor Mary Gardy on WebEx.
Thank you, Chair. And just very briefly, I think it's regrettable that Councillor McAleer couldn't wait till his time was up to give his contribution to the meeting, because Councillor McAleer, as he points out, is local to the area, and I think his points are very valid and need to be represented, as do other representatives of the area, because I know my area as local councillor would, and one thing and another, but he must learn that shouting in is not helping him, and if he had waited, we could have heard the full thrust of his argument, which would have been possibly a counter argument against the proposer. I suppose in a way to resolve this, and I do support that. I personally don't take much heed from. I know it's a very divisive situation down there, and there is quite clearly people strongly for it and strongly against it. And the bit in the middle is the bit that's unknown, and the bit that has to be established, whether this indeed project, the status of it, what is going on, one thing or another, etc. And that's the reason that I find such difficulty with it, because Emmett's very passionate, friend is Councillor McAleer, there's objection, there's others that are very passionate that, it's a goer, but the fact of the matter is we need to hear all sides, and we need to have a civil conversation. If to make this any more easily put through, if there's quite rightly said, we don't know whether this is true or not. It's an email that has come through to Victor, and quite rightly we've often brought information to council to say I've received an information, and we've maybe had a letter on the back of it or one thing, so that's not unheard of. But if Victor wanted to maybe amend his proposal in that he has been contacted with activities that is not conducive to good behaviour, and that all workplaces should not receive intimidation. Let's face it, we're the council, and some of our council staff have received terrible intimidation when they were out and about, whether it's their work or whether they were striking or one thing or another. So if it was generalised, perhaps there could be a consensus here, but I do support that, we just can't, there is authorities to deal with, situations that maybe we need to go to the PSNI or wherever, but a general that nobody supports intimidation for anyone at their work. I think every member would agree to that, but when we do go into individual businesses, we do need the clarity, and I would accept that. So unless there was a slight amendment to say that on the back of what he got, that he's happy to amend his proposal, that this council does not accept any intimidation from anyone at their workplace or going to about their daily business, that's not necessary. I think then maybe we could have a unanimous kind of agreement on it, but perhaps that's just wishful thinking. But I know the people I appreciate all angles of the argument, but that's just my interjection at this stage, Chair.
Thank you, Mary. I'm going to go back to Victor briefly to comment on your wish to have his motion or his proposal amended.
I think it should be well known that I would condemn any intimidation or threats to any staff, regardless of where they come from or who they work for. I was contacted by I've actually been contacted by 3 people, and one of them I forgot to mention. And I have no doubt that what I am being told is the truth. I would be happy to sit down and have a chat with any councillor, but if it's going to be on a situation like happened there tonight, where we're going to be continuously interrupted and shouted at and roared down. We all have our opinions on everything. I'm a councillor for Fermanagh and Omagh District Council, and that is, as has been said in the past, that is for all the council area. And if I have individuals who come to me from within the area, one of them actually was quite close to me where I live, who works there. And if locals are going to come to me with grievances or with concerns, I am going to highlight them. I'm not picking out on any particular, I haven't mentioned any names tonight. I have just basically translated what I have in front of me and have told you. And certainly on the back of what Mary's saying,
You're being repetitive here, and we've been round this. Are you going to accept Mary's proposal?
Absolutely.
Yes. So we have an amended then, and are you going to second that, Matthew? That it's all workers should be entitled to work in. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm happy enough to accept that as a seconder, and I do want to say, just I can't whisper to Mary because she's not sitting behind me tonight, but I think that was very sensible. So thank you, Councillor Garrity.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Keith Elliott. Briefly.
Just quickly, just thanks for letting me in. So just a quick Facebook search, and just as the debate was going on, and it's quite evident what's going on up there. So the proof's on Facebook, anybody can find it, and maybe I know the Sinn Féin there, they're reluctant to vote against it, but here some of your members are getting a right slating on it too. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, actually, the proposal has now been amended that all workers should be entitled to work go to their workplace without the fear of intimidation or threats. So, have we any dissent against that? Of Councillor Deacon on WebEx.
Yes, Chair, if I could just make a comment. Chair, it is clear that, there is strong feeling on this issue in the chamber, and people do express their views often very passionately. And I mean, I have to say, I am a great believer in free speech, and I think that, Chair, to be fair, that you have conducted the meeting fairly this evening, and I accept that. However, do we as a council really have to put out a public statement to say that every worker is entitled to go about their work without fear of harassment? I mean, surely that principle underlines and underscores everything that we do as a council. I mean, to me, it would be just a bland exercise that really would have no meaning, because I have no doubt that each and every member of this council would unreservedly condemn any attempt to intimidate any worker. There is a public inquiry ongoing into the activities of Dalradian. Let us await the outcome of that inquiry. And, I really don't feel that I can support any such proposal, because it's quite meaningless. It's quite bland. I certainly don't feel that I have to state publicly that a worker should be free of intimidation and harassment. I mean, that is a fundamental. It should go without being said, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patrick Withers, you haven't been in on this topic.
Chair, thank you. Just some clarification there on what exactly is now being proposed. So is it the general workers, or is there only going to be any reference to Dalradian specifically and this specific incident that Victor is referring to? And otherwise, I would also, if just a general comment, then I would share Councillor Deacon's comments there that, is there much need for it at all at that stage and to let it go? So if you can clarify that, Chair, thank you.
Sorry, Patrick. Okay, so The proposal, I think, is just a bland proposal that we are against. Again, it's workers working under intimidation or threat in any fields. That includes our own staff and any other workers within there from, well, I suppose any workers anywhere, I suppose, technically. So is there any dissent from that? I know Councillor Deehan had said she couldn't vote for it, but
That's basic employment law. I think just that people shouldn't work under threats. Basic employment law. I think we're getting into this just for the sake of Dalradian's purpose. I think, as Councillor Deehan said, it's a waste of time, and I'll be opposing it.
okay. So just go straight to the vote then. No, I'm just going to go straight to the vote. We've had enough on this here.
Recorded vote, Chair.
Sorry, can you make sure that, can you hold off the vote until we make sure if Councillor McAleer is back in, he is allowed to vote, he's only silenced? Yeah.
And sorry, Chair, just for clarity, the vote is that we support all workers and anyone to work, they're free of
Yes,
harassment.
it's your amendment, Mary.
Just in case anyone decides to vote against that they know exactly what they're doing. Pointless as it may seem, it would be silly to vote against it. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor McAleer is in the waiting room, as far as I know. Chair.
No, he should be back on again, he's on my list. Okay. Is the vote activated in the chamber? Oh yeah, thank you. Somebody left. My vote is no. Chair. Chair. Can all councillors check that their voting was working? Is it still?
It has
I've
voted,
lost
Chair.
one of you.
It has worked on WebEx, Chair. Yeah.
Don't find it. Okay, so that vote's concluded. There's 24 for, 2 against, and 1 abstention. Okay, thank you. So now we move on to confidential. So proposed Councillor Paul Robinson, seconded by Councillor Matthew Bell. waiting for a second to get an indication from Donald. Okay, so I'm just going to Officer John News for a quick summary of the business carried out during confidential.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So while in committee, members considered the confidential minutes of the Environmental Services Committee on Wednesday, the 11th of January 2023, and there were no matters arising. Members also considered...
Members, if you just hold it for about a minute here, we're nearly finished, just before you burst into song.
Members also considered a confidential report on a number of estate matters and approved 2 of the recommendations and deferred a decision on 1 of those matters until the March 2023 committee.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you very much, everybody. We've got the business. Oh, sorry. Proposer, Councillor Paul Robinson, or Paul Stevenson, seconded by Councillor Paul Robinson, to adopt the report there. So thank you very much, everybody. We've managed to get a meeting finished 2 months in a row, which isn't like me at all. Thank you very much. Yes, away you go.
Thank you, Chair. Good night, everybody.
Right.